While France and its couture inspires the whole world, the town of Luneville is in a way its capital. Here, a very precise technique is taught. A stitch of less than 1 millimeter, which, when multiplied over several weeks, results in this. A piece of embroidery of incomparable finesse.
That's good. Keep it like that. Always on this side, okay?
Okay.
To make it, a small stitch named after the town is used. It's called the Luneville stitch.
It's a chain stitch that we make with our Luneville hook. We thread through the hole, catch the thread underneath, bring it up through the small loop, then delicately thread it into the next hole.
Aude has been teaching this technique for 20 years to trainees from the world over, like Angela from Moldova, who's just started the second month of her apprenticeship.
I'm very proud of this. At first sight, it looks like it was done quickly, but it's lots and lots of hours of work.
How many hours?
2 weeks.
Because Luneville embroidery is more than a pastime. In the early 20th century, it was even the main trade in the couture sector, driven by orders from the Château de Luneville.
In the surrounding countryside, many embroiderers worked at home, but when the weather was fine, they worked together outdoors. There were 25,000 people working as embroiderers in the 1920s.
A boom brought to a halt by the arrival of machines.
This embroidery machine was a direct competitor of the Luneville stitch because the production costs were so much lower.
On the left, handmade embroidery. On the right, machine-made embroidery. A less refined imitation, which almost killed off the Luneville stitch. But the embroiderers had a revolutionary idea, to add beads and sequins to their famous stitches.
Here's a part in tulle with tiny beads stitched on, and here a part with rhinestones, sequins and beads.
And the idea worked. It propelled the Luneville stitch onto the runways of haute couture fashion shows and those of small designers, like Christine Noé. After a training course at the Château de Luneville, she decided to launch her own brand of accessories.
I used the Luneville stitch to make backgrounds and small decorations.
Accessories whose production still remains confidential.
I'm proud to keep the stitch alive and to make modern things with an old technique.
Know-how that is now protected since being inscribed on UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage list.
The pink might be too deep for the necessary mood.
French couture also shines thanks to prestigious companies such as Hermès. Founded in 1837 by a manufacturer of equestrian harnesses and saddles, it's now internationally renowned for its square silk scarves, launched a century later in 1937. Based a few kilometers from Lyon, production begins with a watercolor design, which is then reworked by computer.
I have to be very precise. The aim is to have zero difference between the artist's mock-up and the printed silk. So my job is both artistic and technical, because I adapt the design for the textile. I don't reproduce it stroke by stroke. I adapt it a little for the printed silk.
Painstaking work amounting to 800 hours per scarf. Then the mixing of colors begins, with extreme precision to produce the required tones.
We do a first conformity check with different brush strokes. That way, if it's not right, we can fix it later.
Next comes the so-called Lyonnaise printing. Square after square, robots apply the dyes, going from lightest to darkest. The last step is hemming, hand stitching that requires special training.
Some of us had never hand-sewn before, so yes, we felt a lot of pressure when we started. That then calms down, and you become totally enchanted. It's so agreeable to work on such beautiful material. Hermès silk squares are extremely beautiful. I think that gives us extra motivation.
This French-style hemming is the fruit of almost 100 years of perfection. A rare form of know-how that the brand wanted to reappropriate by moving this part of its business to the Lyon region in 2012.